Here we go again.
Oh, no, not again.
You've seen it before, haven't you?
Dom, how long have we been doing this?
Once more unto the breach, dear friends.
Again and again and again until we're both dead.
Hello and welcome to You've Seen It Before, movie reviews with connections in mind. 1917 is directed by Sam Mendes and stars Dean Clark Chapman, George McKay, as well as guest appearances from actors such as Benedict Cumberbatch, Colin Firth, Mark Strong, and Andrew Scott. And this is the story of two lance corporals in the First World War who are sent as messengers to two battalions of British soldiers on the front lines of the Western Front, who, unbeknownst to them, are walking into a German ambush. And if these two lance corporals don't get that message to them in time, two battalions or 1,600 men will lose their lives, and it is up to them to prevent that. This film has the unique gimmick of being shot in such a way so that it looks like one continuous take. Now, this video review will contain certain spoilers of 1917 as well as certain other films. I'll put a full list in the description below. I'll give my spoiler-free thoughts before I get into any spoiler talk. Just know that there will be some spoiler talk later on in this review. So with that in mind, let's get into some spoiler-free thoughts of 1917. Is it a good movie? Is it worth seeing in the theaters? Is it worth your money? I would say yes, yes, and yes. My gosh, this is a gorgeous film to look at. Please see this in the theaters. Please see it in, if you can see it in IMAX, please see it in IMAX if you can. Man, this is a visually stunning film. And like I said, this was shot in such a way that it was meant to look like one continuous take. There are no obvious cutscenes apart from one right around the midpoint. But everything else is shot in such a way that there's no obvious cut points in this film. And watching this, knowing that going in, is kind of fun to try and figure out where exactly the cuts are. Some places are kind of obvious, like if the camera, an object like a tree or a rock fills the entire screen for a split second, that's probably where a cut happened. But a lot of places, I think, there were no cuts, and these people had to work tirelessly and get their delivery and their movements perfect in order for this thing to work. So I could tell a lot of work went into this film, and it shows. I mean, our two lead characters, the two lance corporals, Blake and Schofield, they're believable as characters. They do a great job propelling us all through the trenches of the Western Front in World War I. They did a good job of showing the horrors of no man's land, as well as just dwelling on certain realities of war that, a lot of other war films have dwelt on these realities before, but not quite like this, I think. I feel like the message of this film was poignant in the fact that it was relatively simple. And we'll get into what I think that message is in the spoiler section in case you haven't seen 1917 yet. But, I mean, the cinematography on this, this should win the Academy Award for Best Cinematography for, I believe, Roger Deakins. I mean, he is a masterworker at this stage. And if you needed any more proof that he was a genius, this is it. There's honestly, what else can I say about this that is good about this? Like I said, there are some guest appearances in this film. It's not just the two lance corporals. We had some bigger name actors playing smaller roles, such as Colin Firth plays the British general who sends the Lance Corporals on the mission. He's barely in this, and his presence is not at all distracting from this. I mean, it doesn't really shake you out of the picture when a bigger name actor comes into the story, such as Mark Strong or Andrew Scott. It's like, oh, hey, cool. And I mean, they do their part, and then they step aside, and that are two guys on their mission. And I think that was a good job with the script as far as not making it overly distracting, especially with these two guys who, as far as I know, they haven't done anything really big as far as films or TV. I could be wrong on that, but to my mind, they were relative nobodies. And I think that was another element that plays into this kind of war film, that a lot of war films, they put a big name as the main character, and it's fairly obvious that character is going to be our main focus all the way through, and we're going to focus on them as them as an actor rather than them as a character. And that is not the case with these two guys. So I think that was the plus in this film's category. If I was going to give this film any negatives, I would say maybe the characters aren't necessarily well developed. This is a very plot-driven film in that we're not focusing as much on who these two guys are per se. It is a lot of like how they get from point A to point B and what obstacles are thrown in the way and whether or not they'll accomplish the goal rather than them growing as characters. Because I believe this the events of the story take place over a day and a half. So there really isn't that much personal growth to be had over the course of this. But I think that's the way this film is laid out, again, without spoilers at this stage, that's okay in this regard. So, I mean, yeah, so if you're going into looking for a deep dive into these characters and what their motivations are, you're not going to get that really. So that's really the only negative that I can think of. Other than that, there were one or two shots at a point where it's nighttime that I found it very hard to see what was going on, and that was probably intentional on that point, but I find that can be kind of distracting, especially as an audience member who wants to see what exactly is going on here. So, I mean, that's just a personal thing for me, but that was just a couple of scenes in the length of the entire movie. Like I said, there's not a whole lot for me to say negative-wise, and there's not a whole lot for me to dive into here without getting into spoilers, besides the fact that this is a great film, I think. And had I been allowed to see it in Colorado in 2019, I would have listed this as one of my favorites of 2019. As it stands, it didn't come out until January 10th of 2020 here in Colorado. So I have to say, this is one of my favorites. So far, this is the first new release that I've seen in 2020, and this is a home run for me. I would, if I'm going to give this a letter grade, I would give 1917 an A. I'm not going to give it quite an A+ because, as I said before, there are a couple of little nitpicks that's not a completely flawless picture by any means, but this is a really darn good film. So a solid A on that front. So with that being said, those are my spoiler-free thoughts of 1917. Now let's get into some spoiler-filled analysis of 1917, where we get into some plot developments and character arcs that may seem familiar and where you may have seen them before. There isn't really a whole ton to talk about in 1917 as far as parallels and parallels go between different movies. The big thing with the one-shot gimmick, other films have done this to varying degrees of length, whether it be one extended sequence or the entire movie. The entire movie being one shot is a little is a little less common. Some examples of films that only have one extended scene shot to look like one continuous take are films such as Serenity, the opening walkthrough of the ship, The Revenant, with the battle with the Native Americans and Leo walking around that battle scene where they attack their camp. Kingsmen, the Secret Service, the battle at the in the church. That was a extended look like one shot, sweeping camera motion there. More significantly, Spectre, also directed by Sam Mendes, who the first, I believe, 5 or 6 minutes of the Day of the Dead opening, where James Bond is walking through the city, the streets of Mexico City, and across the rooftops, shot like one continuous shot. And then some films that take that further into the look like one continuous shot throughout the entire movie. I might be wrong about this. I haven't seen it in a while, but Hardcore Henry, I believe, was shot to look like one continuous take. And of course, that was all first person. And I believe also Birdman was another one that was shot to look like one continuous take throughout pretty much the entire picture. So it has been done before. It is a little bit of a gimmick as far as the film go. It's not an easy gimmick to pull off, mind you, but it has been done in the past. And then thematic wise, I would say if there were any real ready comparisons to be made with other war films, since this is not based on a true story as far as I know, I would say the biggest comparison to be made here is with Saving Private Ryan, in that another film that I believe the first opening, the opening scenes are shot to make it look like one continuous shot, at least on the beach. I rewatched that last year. I have to rewatch it again, but I believe that's how it was. Correct me if I'm wrong. But also that story-wise involves them trying to find someone ahead of the lines, and a small group of soldiers having to go through enemy-controlled territory to find someone and deliver a message. In the case of Saving Private Ryan, trying to find the titular Private Ryan and bring him back, whereas this one in 1970 they're trying to bring the message to the unit preparing to attack the German front lines. And also, more importantly, I feel like this was a parallel between Saving Private Ryan and 1917, the subversion of who the main character is. Maybe I was an idiot, but going into 1917, but because all the trailers pointed out, pretty much all the story that you need to know is in the trailer, that Colin Firth tells Lance Corporal Blake that he has a brother in I forgot the name of the unit, that's about to attack the town that the Germans have played the ambush. If you don't get there in time, 1,600 men will die, including your brother. That's a lot of personal stakes for this one guy. So I assumed he was going to be the main character going through the rest of the movie. But he gets killed probably within the first third of the movie. He gets randomly stabbed by a German pilot that they rescue from the crashed plane, and then it's all up to Private Schofield for the rest of the film. And that kind of surprised me. I was like, when I saw him get stabbed, I was like, oh man, I was there. Okay, so I'm just gonna bandage him up, and then when he actually dies, like, oh man, wow, all right, we're gonna go through this now. Kind of like how in Saving Private Ryan, if they do kind of the obvious the fake out that it's very obvious the second time you watch through the movie, but if you don't know going into Saving Private Ryan, you would think that Tom Hanks's character is the old man on the D-Day cemetery in France, and then he was the one who survived the whole thing. But no, he dies near the end, and it was actually Private Ryan who was the old man at the cemetery. So I feel like that is a parallel to be drawn there, as well as so those are my main points of comparison between 1917 and what has come before. As far as spoiler discussion about 1917, like I said, the message that I think that this movie was trying to convey, my reading of it, I think that because it focuses on little moments like a soldier comforting his friend in his final minutes, making sure he gets his dog tag and his family rings to his brother, making sure he finds his brother, being singly focused on his mission, and then when it's done, there's the symmetry of he is now he's sleeping against the tree where right when he began where he began the film. It's these simple moments that this film focuses on, and it doesn't really focus at all on the grand cosmic big scale picture of World War I, why it started, why they're fighting certain things. It's the simple soldier's journey focusing here, and it's really all about how a soldier in wartime, when you're in the trenches, when you're fighting man to man, it really is your world shrinks down to, not will I survive till I have kids 20 years in the future, or even what am I going to do next week? It really shrinks right down to, am I going to live the next 20 minutes? That's and then if I do, will I survive the next 20 minutes or the 20 minutes after that? Even smaller than that. I think that was the main message of that story, and I think that's very powerful. And not something that a lot of war films tend to focus on. Or if they do, they focus on it in such a way that it kind of gets drowned out by the noise of the big stuff, the big action scenes in war films. So that's why I think that 1917 is probably one of the better films of 2019, and one of my it's going to be one of my favorite films of 2020. Thank you so much for watching my review of 1917. Already we're off to a great start in 2020. Also, before I leave, I just wanted to give a brief little recommendation. 1917 has you might see it as having some graphically realistic imagery of the horrors of the Western Front in World War I, but I can tell you right now that nothing any actor or any visual effects department can come up with can compare with what actually happened in the war. And to that end, as far as humanizing the war goes, I can't recommend enough Peter Jackson's They Shall Not Grow Old. This is a documentary that he made with archival footage shot in World War I, colorized, restored beautifully, and overlaid with actual audio testimonies of the actual guys who fought in the war, and strung together as more or less a narrative of their time there. If you want to learn more about World War I history and the guys who fought in it, their stories, their words, please definitely check this out. It is very worth it. Also some graphic imagery, but then again, war is hell, right? So like I said, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out my other reviews coming soon. I'll be doing my next movie review, which will be for Birds of Prey, which comes out February 2nd, I believe. And also, I'll be beginning my first of my many reaction series, starting with this year, starting with Star Trek Picard, which comes out near the end of January 23rd, I believe, in and around that time. And I'll be doing my reaction videos for each episode as they come out there. Again, thank you so much for watching. If you like anything you see on my channel, any video, whether it be this one or any other video on my channel, please give me a like, share, and especially subscribe. I very much appreciate it. You guys are the best. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. Thank you so much. But just remember, there is nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it before.